Greetings, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, predictably remained without the Nobel Peace Prize. Maria Karina Machado, one of the brightest representatives of the Venezuelan opposition in recent years, has been declared the new Nobel laureate by the Nobel Peace Prize Committee. By the way, Trump himself spoke of Maria Karina Machado, who in fact led the resistance to the disgusting dictatorship of Nicolas Maduro with unwavering respect, and demanded that the Venezuelan regime ensure her safety. Therefore, it is likely that the fact that the prize was awarded to an oppositionist, in whose defense the President of the United States himself spoke out, makes his absence from the list of Nobel laureates even more unpleasant for the White House. However, the fact that Trump's absence from the list of laureates occurs just when he seems to have achieved the most significant success during his tenure as head of the American state, having achieved an end to the war in the Middle East. At least, the first stage of ending the conflict and the possible release of all Israeli hostages who are still held captive by the terrorist organization Hamas. But however, this does not mean that the White House will abandon the very idea of Donald Trump receiving the Nobel Prize. The nomination of candidates for the award for the 2026 year is already beginning. And here, just in the administration of the President of the United States, they may believe that Donald Trump has much more chances and reasons to become a Nobel laureate. But why does Donald Trump really need the Nobel Prize? It seems to me that the only thing here is that Trump still cannot understand why his predecessor as President of the United States, Barack Obama, received this award. As you know, Obama became a Nobel laureate literally in the first weeks after he became acting head of the United States. And then, too, there were a lot of questions, and on what occasion did the Nobel Committee give the prize to a man who had just won the election of the head of the American state? Without having had time to do almost anything as head of the United States. Only by preparing to fulfill these duties and not being able to demonstrate how he will fulfill his election promises. Barack Obama's Nobel Prize has forever remained in history as an example of how you can get such a serious and prestigious award in advance. And of course, Donald Trump is sure that he, as a well-deserved peacemaker of all times and peoples, is entitled to the Nobel Prize, to a much greater extent than Obama, who received it when he had not yet done anything for real peacekeeping efforts. And since Donald Trump considers himself the political antithesis of Barack Obama, and American society still remains split in two, between two opposing political camps, one of which focuses on people like Trump and the other on people like Obama. And naturally, the camp that focuses on Trump should have its own Nobel laureate. And of course, Donald Trump's receipt of the Nobel Prize should have included him, in fact, in the list of outstanding American presidents who are recognized as historical figures not only by the Americans themselves, but also by the entire world community. After all, it was not only Barack Obama who became the Nobel laureate of the United States as President of the United States. Among the Nobel Prize winners of American presidents were Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, and Jimmy Carter. It is obvious that Donald Trump does not treat each of these politicians with great sympathy. His political credo is a factual refutation of both Woodrow Wilson's political legacy and, of course, Jimmy Carter's political legacy. But perhaps the current American president just wants to prove that it is this credo that deserves the recognition of the Nobel Committee. And here, of course, we are faced with a real civilizational contradiction. Because it is precisely the credo of Donald Trump that contradicts not so much the political credo of Woodrow Wilson or Barack Obama, but the political credo of the Nobel Committee to represent its members who should receive the Nobel Peace Prizes in general. On the other hand, there were many contradictory persons in the list of these laureates who, after receiving the Nobel Prize, demonstrated that they were far from its ideal. Let's recall at least the head of the Palestine Liberation Organization, Yasser Arafat, who, after receiving the Nobel Prize, actually disrupted the Middle East peace process with all his further activities. Let's also recall Aung San Suu Kyi, who, after receiving the Nobel Prize, was able to lead Myanmar for a short time and demonstrated that she could surpass local generals in relation to national minorities. And there are quite a lot of examples of Nobel laureates that Oslo does not like to remember. Therefore, I do not exclude at all that if Donald Trump really achieves impressive peacekeeping successes, if he manages to actually end the war in the Middle East and achieve the end of Russia's war against Ukraine in the 26th year, he will become a Nobel laureate and satisfy his love of purity. Although most likely the 2026 year will be the year when the already ongoing wars will not end, but new ones will begin, much more dramatic and dangerous in terms of their consequences. And therefore, Donald Trump will have a place to turn around for the next period of his presidency. And then the Nobel Prize may be the finale of his tenure as the head of the American state. Of course, if this stay is not marked by a crushing Third World War. The prerequisites for this are already ripe and have been demonstrated by all the developments of recent months. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it. Subscribe to my social networks 4 channels in Patreon Understand Coffee and Donatello, which helps to develop these resources. Use the sponsorship feature in YouTube itself. Peace to you.